Welcome, fellow food enthusiasts and curious epicures, to a captivating journey through the annals of culinary history. Today, we embark on an exploration of two extraordinary ingredients that have undergone one of the most remarkable transformations in the world of gastronomy: oysters and escargot. These are not merely foods, they are symbols of luxury, sophistication, and a certain je ne sais quoi that graces the most exclusive tables worldwide. Yet beneath their shimmering shells and garlicky butter lies a surprising past, a history rooted in the humble diets of the lower classes, where they were once valued simply as cheap, accessible sources of protein. For many modern palates, the mere thought of consuming snails or raw oysters can elicit a range of reactions, from mild curiosity to outright revulsion. Let's be honest, to the uninitiated, snails are often perceived as nothing more than garden pests, a slimy nuisance best kept far from the dinner plate. And as for oysters, the idea of slurping down a freshly shucked mollusk raw and still very much alive is a concept that can challenge even the most adventurous eaters. The mental image alone might be enough to turn some away. So how did these seemingly unusual, even off-putting ingredients transcend their humble origins? How did they shed the stigma of peasant food to become items of conspicuous consumption, gracing the menus of Michelin-starred restaurants and becoming sought-after delicacies for the discerning diner? What confluence of historical events, cultural shifts, and societal whims propelled them from the realm of necessity to the pinnacle of culinary desire? This is the fascinating culinary enigma we intend to unravel today. We will delve into the intricate tapestry of their past, examining the socioeconomic factors that dictated their early consumption, the ingenious methods developed for their cultivation, and the pivotal moments that redefined their status. We will trace their evolution from mere sustenance to revered delicacy, exploring how shifts in availability, culinary innovation, and even geopolitical events played a crucial role in their transformation. Prepare to have your perceptions challenged, your historical understanding enriched, and perhaps even your palate intrigued as we uncover the delicious and surprising history of how snails and oysters ascended to their rightful place in the pantheon of luxury foods. It's a story not just about food, but about culture, class, and the ever-changing nature of taste. Our gastronomic adventure begins with the humble snail, a creature more commonly associated with a damp garden path than a finely set dinner table. Yet, the history of land snail consumption is as ancient as human civilization itself, stretching back into the mists of prehistory. Imagine, if you will, the Paleolithic period in southern Africa, an astonishing 70,000 to 170,000 years ago. Archaeological evidence from this era clearly indicates that our distant ancestors were already incorporating these mollusks into their diets. This shouldn't come as a surprise. Snails were, and still are, an easily accessible protein source, requiring no sophisticated hunting techniques, making them an invaluable part of the early human diet. The Roman era, cultivation and culinary innovation. The Roman Empire, renowned for its vast conquests and sophisticated culture, also played a pivotal role in popularizing and refining snail consumption across Europe. The Romans were not content with merely gathering snails, they were pioneers in their cultivation. While the lower and middle classes continued to collect snails from their gardens, the Roman elite began to practice what could be considered early forms of aquaculture. They developed specialized snail farms, or cochlearia, where snails were meticulously fattened on diets of spices, honey, and even milk, all designed to enhance their flavor and texture. Pliny the Elder, the celebrated Roman naturalist and philosopher, provided detailed accounts of these practices, describing how snails were raised in ponds and even given wine, a truly extravagant touch, to further plump them up. This early emphasis on quality, controlled feeding, and specialized preparation demonstrates that even then, snails were beginning to be appreciated beyond their basic nutritional value. France, a long and winding road to recognition. Now, let's fast forward to France, a nation whose culinary identity is today inextricably linked with escargot. However, the snail's journey to becoming a French gastronomic icon was anything but straightforward. The first French recipe for snails appeared in the influential Le Ménagier de Paris, the Parisian household book, in the 1390s. Yet, it is striking that similar recipes are conspicuously absent from other contemporary cookbooks of the period. This suggests that snail consumption, while present, was likely not widespread or considered prestigious enough to be included in the more aristocratic culinary compilations of the time. By 1530, an anonymous author of a French treatise on an eclectic mix of foods, frogs, snails, turtles, and artichokes, viewed them all as equally bizarre but popular with his contemporaries, as noted by Alan Davidson in the Oxford Companion to Food. Part of their appeal, particularly for snails, stemmed from a practical and religious necessity, avoiding meat on lean days. The Catholic Church, in a classification that seems peculiar today, designated snails as fish. This meant they could be consumed during Lent and other abstinence periods when meat was forbidden, offering a welcome dietary variety without infringing on religious strictures. The urban elite's disdain and regional persistence. Despite their practical utility and regional popularity, snails faced a significant uphill battle in the eyes of the Parisian urban elite. For the next 2 centuries, when snails did appear in Parisian cookbooks, it was often accompanied by an apology for including such a disgusting ingredient. This reflects a clear class divide in culinary preferences. While the upper crust of the capital disdained them, snails continued to be a staple in the eastern provinces of France. Regions like Alsace, in particular, maintained a strong tradition of snail consumption. An 1811 cookbook from Metz, a city in Alsace, not only described methods for raising snails reminiscent of Roman practices, but also detailed a special platter, l'escargotier, specifically designed for serving them. This regional tenacity kept the culinary tradition alive, slowly paving the way for its eventual resurgence. A Czar's endorsement, the turning point. The true turning point for escargot, transforming it from a regional curiosity to a national delicacy, arrived in a most unexpected and historically ironic fashion. The year was 1814. Napoleon Bonaparte had suffered a decisive defeat, and Russian Tsar Alexander I had marched into Paris with the Allied forces. French diplomat Charles Maurice de Talleyrand, a master of political maneuvering and sophisticated entertaining, hosted a grand dinner in honor of the victorious Tsar. The chef tasked with catering this momentous occasion was none other than Marie-Antoine Carême, often hailed as the father of French cuisine, and a native of Burgundy, the spiritual home of the now famous Burgundy snails. Carême, understanding the importance of impressing such a distinguished guest, prepared and served what would become the quintessential escargot dish, snails with garlic, parsley, and butter. Legend has it that the Tsar was utterly captivated by this new and exquisite dish, raving about its unique flavor. This imperial seal of approval had an immediate and profound impact. Snails, almost overnight, became wildly popular among the Parisian elite. A recipe for Burgundy snails, virtually unknown in mainstream French culinary circles prior to this event, first appeared in a French culinary dictionary published in 1825, cementing its place in the gastronomic lexicon. It is indeed a historical irony that it took the endorsement of a foreign emperor who just conquered France to elevate escargot from its humble, often scorned status back to a position of luxury. From that point on, escargot transitioned from a symbol of regional, lower-class fare to a celebrated emblem of French haute cuisine. Today, snails remain immensely popular in France, with consumption peaking dramatically during the festive Christmas holidays. There is even a National Escargot Day, celebrated on May 24th, a testament to its enduring legacy. Thus, the snail, a creature once dismissed as a slimy nuisance, completed its extraordinary journey from garden pest to a celebrated gastronomic delight, forever etched into the heart of French culinary tradition.
Our journey now shifts to the briny depths, where we encounter another fascinating creature that has undergone an equally dramatic culinary transformation: the oyster. Like the snail, the oyster boasts an incredibly ancient lineage, predating much of human history. Fossil evidence of oysters dates back an astonishing 200 million years to the Triassic era, proving their remarkable resilience and long-standing presence on Earth. Furthermore, evidence of fossilized oysters has been discovered on every major landmass, underscoring their ubiquitous nature across the globe. Closer to human history, archaeological findings revealed the existence of sophisticated indigenous oyster fisheries in North America and Australia dating back to the Holocene period, approximately 10,000 years ago. These ancient shell middens, vast piles of discarded oyster shells, attest to their significant role as a food source for early human populations. Classical antiquity, a delicacy of the elite. References to what are unmistakably oysters appear in the classical Greek texts of renowned authors such as Aristotle and Homer, indicating their consumption in ancient Hellas. Archaeological excavations at the legendary city of Troy have unearthed numerous oyster shells, confirming their status as a favored food among its inhabitants. Traditionally, in ancient Greece, oysters were often served as a first course at banquets. And interestingly, they were frequently cooked, sometimes even prepared with exotic spices. This suggests a more refined culinary approach even then, elevating them beyond a simple raw consumption. The Romans, ever appreciative of fine foods, also held oysters in high esteem. Pliny the Elder, a recurring figure in our story, referred to oysters as a Roman delicacy. He meticulously documented the innovative methods of Sergius Orata, widely regarded as the pioneer of Roman oyster farming. Orata, driven by commercial ambition, established extensive oyster beds and meticulously sourced the finest specimens from across the vast Roman Empire, selling them at a premium to his elite clientele. This organized cultivation and trade further solidified the oyster's status as a luxury item, accessible primarily to the wealthy. Medieval Europe, the perishable luxury. During the medieval period, coastal dwellers continued the age-old practice of gathering oysters at low tide, making them a readily available and economical food source for those living by the sea. However, for affluent consumers residing inland, oysters presented a far greater luxury. Their highly perishable nature meant that transporting them to inland castles and towns was a logistical challenge, requiring speed and significant expense. This inherent scarcity and the costs associated with preservation and transport transformed oysters into a symbol of wealth and access, an exclusive treat for those who could afford such a fleeting indulgence. England, palate preferences and public consumption. In England, around 1390, the nobility often preferred their oysters cooked. They were commonly roasted over coals or poached in rich broths, a practice that likely served as a measure to prevent food poisoning, given the limited understanding of foodborne illnesses at the time. As late as the 17th century, an English author, perhaps with a touch of culinary snobbery, cautioned, "But if they be eaten raw, they require good wine to help digestion." This illustrates an ongoing awareness, even if not scientifically understood, of the potential risks and the need for accompanying beverages to aid the raw oyster experience. Yet, despite these aristocratic preferences and concerns, oysters were also incredibly abundant and popular among the general populace. In the very same 17th century, it was reported that as many as 100,000 oysters were consumed daily in Edinburgh alone. The sheer volume is staggering. Archaeological evidence from this period vividly supports this claim. Oyster shells from the tavern in the basement of Gladstone's Land, a historic tenement house in the Scottish capital, were so plentiful that they were actually used to fill in gaps in the building's brickwork. By the 18th century, smaller oysters had become a popular, cheap pub snack, a quick bite for the common man, while larger specimens were regularly added as a meaty component to stew pots, offering an affordable way to enhance flavor and protein content.
The narrative of oyster consumption takes a dramatic and ultimately tragic turn with the advent of industrialization and unchecked exploitation. The Scottish oyster farms in the Firth of Forth, an inlet of the North Sea, reached a peak production of an astonishing 30 million oysters annually by the 1790s. This level of harvesting, while initially a boon, proved to be catastrophically unsustainable. The relentless and continuous overharvesting soon took its inevitable toll on the delicate ecosystem. By 1884, barely a century later, the harvest in the Forth had plummeted to a mere 6,000 oysters, a stark 99.98% decline. The local oyster population was officially declared extinct in 1957, a grim testament to the devastating impact of human overexploitation. This marked a pivotal moment, shifting the oyster from a ubiquitous and cheap food source to a rapidly dwindling resource. The American oyster industry, boom, bust, and catastrophe. As wild oyster stocks dwindled in Europe, a new era of large-scale oyster farming began to develop in urban centers across the United States in the 19th century, particularly in bustling cities like New York City and Baltimore. These enterprises, driven by a burgeoning demand and the perceived inexhaustibility of natural resources, were initially incredibly successful, providing jobs and an abundance of oysters. However, the rapid urbanization and lack of environmental regulation proved to be their undoing. These harvesting grounds and surrounding waters became increasingly polluted by sewage and industrial waste. The consequences were dire. In 1924, contaminated oysters were responsible for the deadliest outbreak of food poisoning in United States history, claiming the lives of 150 people and sickening thousands more due to typhoid fever. This catastrophic event not only devastated the oyster industry, but also served as a chilling reminder of the critical importance of public health and environmental stewardship. The modern predicament: rarity defines luxury. Fast forward to today, and the stark reality is that the era of overabundance for oysters is a distant memory. The global oyster populations are facing unprecedented threats from a multitude of factors, including continued overfishing, rampant pollution, and the invasive spread of non-native species. This critical scarcity of wild oysters, coupled with the significant resources and stringent environmental controls required to safely and sustainably farm them, has fundamentally reshaped their market value. The modern oyster is no longer a cheap source of protein for the masses. Instead, it has been irrevocably transformed into a premium product, a true luxury item. Its high price reflects not just its delicate flavor and unique texture, but also the immense challenges involved in its cultivation, the dedicated efforts required for environmental sustainability, and the sheer rarity of truly pristine, healthy oyster beds. The very scarcity that emerged from past exploitation has ironically cemented its status as a coveted delicacy. Thus, the oyster's journey from a common, accessible food source to an aspirational, high-end culinary experience is a powerful narrative of human impact on natural resources, illustrating how a combination of historical abundance, reckless consumption, and subsequent environmental awareness has redefined its place on our plates.
Our exploration into the fascinating histories of snails and oysters reveals a compelling pattern. Their ascent to luxury status was not a linear progression, but rather a complex interplay of historical circumstances, cultural perceptions, culinary innovations, and, crucially, shifts in their availability. For oysters, it was the tragic narrative of abundance leading to overexploitation and then scarcity that ultimately propelled them into the realm of high-end indulgence. Their rarity, born from environmental degradation and the demanding requirements of sustainable aquaculture, made them precious. For snails, it was a different trajectory, a long period of being dismissed as peasant food, followed by a dramatic cultural reevaluation, notably catalyzed by a single influential dining experience with a foreign emperor, which elevated them to gourmet status and solidified their place as a symbol of French culinary sophistication. These two stories offer profound insights into the ever-evolving nature of human taste and the socio-economic forces that shape our diets.
They demonstrate that what we consider a luxury is often a mutable concept, influenced by factors far beyond intrinsic flavor or nutritional value. It can be scarcity, the approval of an influential figure, exoticism, or simply the passage of time and a change in cultural perspective. This brings us to a compelling question for the future of food. What could be the next surprising ingredient to transition from the periphery to the pinnacle of luxury dining? If we apply the lessons learned from snails and oysters, could other unconventional food sources follow a similar path? Consider insects, for instance. Historically, consuming insects, entomophagy, is not a new phenomenon. Ancient Romans, as we've seen, ate beetles and grasshoppers, and numerous cultures around the world continue to consume insects as a regular part of their diet today. However, they are not, yet, widely considered luxury products in the Western world. They are often viewed with the same kind of initial aversion that oysters and snails once faced. But imagine a world where environmental concerns about traditional livestock farming become even more pressing, where the demand for sustainable protein sources intensifies, and where culinary innovation begins to unlock sophisticated flavor profiles in insects. What if a renowned chef, much like Marie Antoine Carême, creates an exquisite dish featuring, say, honey-roasted locusts, presented with impeccable plating and endorsed by a celebrity influencer or a head of state? Could this spark a similar shift in perception, transforming a seemingly bizarre ingredient into the next must-try delicacy for the adventurous gourmet? The potential is certainly there. The global food landscape is constantly evolving, driven by sustainability concerns, health trends, and the relentless pursuit of novel culinary experiences. As resources become scarcer and our palates become more globalized and open to new sensations, the definition of what constitutes fine dining is ripe for reinterpretation. Perhaps the next generation of luxury foods will challenge our preconceived notions even more radically than snails and oysters once did. Maybe a meticulously farmed and sustainably sourced insect presented with artistry and celebrated for its unique taste and ecological footprint will become the next species to proudly take its place on the plate. The history of snails and oysters serves as a powerful reminder that culinary preferences are not static. They are fluid, dynamic, and endlessly fascinating, constantly shaped by the fascinating interplay between culture, scarcity, and the human palate. So as we conclude our journey, let us keep an open mind, for the next great luxury food might be something we least expect, waiting for its moment to shine.